Welcome to Inside Politics. I'm Chris Vark with the Calgary Herald, joined by Don Braid. Don, we're at the Stampede at the Western Events Centre with the little horses behind us. Maybe it's a good way to introduce ourselves to Alberta politics. But there's been a lot of racing going on in this Stampede. We've seen all three federal leaders here in town over the last several days. We've seen the provincial politicians flock here. We've seen a series of announcements in Calgary regarding a ring road and a new cancer center. No shortage. What do you sort of make of all of this whirly-burly?
Well, it's been the most interesting Stampede politically ever. I mean, we've got a brand new government, an NDP government coming in to ride a horse, and we've got three opposition leaders who are already fighting a federal election campaign. So one barbecue after another. The federal leaders, including the Prime Minister, stayed around longer than usual. Rachel and the NDP, meanwhile, were incredibly busy on both the government front and the Stampede front. It's been extraordinarily interesting.
Let's talk a little bit about the Prime Minister of the country, Stephen Harper, meeting with Rachel Notley, the new NDP Premier, for the first time, and definitely a different dynamic. She said she talked about flood mitigation and also carbon levies. Can these two do business?
Not until after the election. I'm sure they will be able to do business if we go into a new federal government with the same player, which is not clear, but they're not going to give each other anything before the election. I mean, Mulcair clearly is in here sort of riding Notley's horse and riding her popularity.
Right.
And there's issues that can wait until after the election. But I can well imagine she might do something of her own on the climate change front. But can you imagine a deal between the NDP and the feds on that? No, it's not going to happen.
Rachel Notley, for the very first time as Premier, hosted the Premier's annual pancake breakfast at McDougall Centre. What was very interesting, I guess, and you and I both talked about this, is it felt like we were looking, in sort of the opposite world, where all the NDP and sort of their support base were down flipping the burgers, or the pancakes rather, and all the Conservatives and the former lobbyists were sort of up on the grassy hills, sort of looking down.
Yeah, and this time they weren't there. I think I counted two people I would classify as lobbyists who work for companies to represent them to the government. Well, they had deep Tory connections, and now all of a sudden they don't have them anymore. And it's very funny to watch one of these people try to lobby Brian Mason, for instance. I saw it. I saw that with my own eyes. But it was a very different, not so many people. It's too bad, really, because it wasn't packed. It should be packed with regular folks coming down to have a free meal. But there was a big food lineup, which may also be a sign of the times.
Rachel Notley was white-hatted, almost put her hat on incorrectly. But how well do you think that the new Premier did in Calgary in the middle of sort of the quintessential Calgary week?
I thought she did fine. I mean, some people are looking for a way to show that she's not Albertan, that she's not a Westerner, that she doesn't know how to ride a horse, she doesn't know how to put a hat on, but it's really pretty ridiculous. I mean, anybody is willing to give her half a chance probably have to acknowledge that they did okay. They made some significant policy announcements. She was everywhere at the events, talking to people, wading through crowds. Acting the way a Premier should at Stampede.
We saw at the Premier's barbecue on Saturday evening that we had the two Conservative leaders from Alberta, and that being Rick McIver, the interim PC leader, sitting just a few feet away from Brian Jean, the new Wild Rose leader. Interesting the fact that they're there at Stephen Harper's barbecue, the man who united federal Conservatives, and yet there seems to be a huge divide in Alberta politics and the Conservatives. Do you think that there's going to be pressure on these two to get together at some point?
You know, they're bound to try and unite. Something's going to happen. These things are usually led by the voters. And, you know, the PC's actually got a significant percentage of the popular vote. So a guy like McIver is going to see that as a sign that he should stick around and be the next Premier. I think it needs a couple of years for the grievances to settle before they really work something out. And maybe in the meantime, there's a migration of supporters to Wild Rose, and that sort of puts the writing on the wall.
Yeah, I don't see why Brian Jean would feel any impetus to, reach out to the progressive Conservatives any meaningful way. They can just let the Conservatives, flounder and let the forces come to them, it seems.
Exactly, and the barbecue, Harper's barbecue, was really funny because you had that divide in the room between Wild Rose and the provincial PCs, and you also had Joe Ceci in the room, which was the divide between Harper and the NDP, and he had to sit there. He went unknowingly, not knowing what it was like, and listened to Harper blasting away at Mulcair for half an hour. It was very amusing.
Rachel Notley and the NDP government did make two significant outreach announcements, in my estimation, here in the city NDP. One was saying they would proceed with the ring road through the southwest area, through the Sutina property, but they would also move ahead with the cancer center at the Foothill site. Now, that's a project that's been waiting for more than a decade. You know, what kind of access will this allow them to get into the electorate here in Calgary?
Well, I think that's good. I mean, the ring road thing, there wasn't really much new about that. In fact, they're even not saying they won't reverse Prentice's decision to delay the southwest portion. And it's a money thing. And the guy who runs the project was telling us, you know, they might have to run it for a couple of years after they're done the Sutina portion to get this other thing open, which is pretty much what Prentice is saying.
Right.
Now, the hospital, on the other hand, that was a pure reversal of Prentice's almost unilateral decision to cancel a hospital they'd been planning for 12 years and had funded. And he demonized that project and tried to make the South Campus look better. It's really not. This is essential, and the NDP's doing it unambiguously.
So, Don, we normally do our winners and losers of the week, but right now we're talking about whose horse is going up and whose horse is going down politically in the province this week. So whose horse is going up?
Well, I thought, as I said before, I think Rachel Notley did a good job. She came down to Calgary. She presented herself well. A couple of major policy announcements for Calgary. The hospital thing was really important, and so was the ring road. And she clarified that they're going to continue with these extremely important projects for the province.
Okay, well, the person who's going up on the rodeo for me is Sarah Hoffman, the health minister. Thought she had a very good week. She restored some funding to the PCN network, which I thought was important. Plus, she also made an announcement which the Tories had dragged on their heels for 12 years, which was making a decision to proceed with at least $1 billion, maybe even $2 billion on the new cancer clinic. So I think that was an important announcement for Calgary. She gets to be my horse riding up. Whose horse, Don, in the past 7 days is going down?
Oh, I mean, I can't believe the PCs. I mean, how do you take that position on the hospital when there's going to be a cancer hospital in the city, when it was your position for 12 years, and then for 3 months with Prentice it wasn't? If it was so bad, why didn't you cancel it years ago? There's so many questions. They keep reminding people of all the things that gotten them beaten. They're going to have a big strategy talk with themselves before very long.
Well, the person whose horse is going down for me is the Rick Fraser, who's, I think, a very erstwhile and very well-spoken conservative MLA. But this week, I really wondered about what he said when he was attacking the decision by the NDP to proceed with the Foothills Hospital. He said, we plan to be building the South Campus Cancer Center site this fall, but instead we're now waiting till at least the fall to see the government's plans for a cheaper facility. Well, first off, the former health minister said he wasn't going to begin construction for 12 to 18 months. Second off, this hospital is probably going to be costing significantly more than the scaled-down version that the Prentice government announced. So I'm not quite sure what Rick Fraser was thinking of, but I think he just got bucked off his horse.
Well, they can't remember what they said. That's the problem. They're contradicting what they said before the election. I rest my case.
All right, well, that's it from another Calgary Stampede for Inside Politics. Thanks, Don.
Okay, thank you. Yeehaw!